I mean, it really isn't chicken, and it's so scary to even look at the process.
I feed it to my child every morning because...
What do you mean? From like a frozen chicken? Like,
yes.
Or like...
Yeah, no. No.
You know, we have trust in our government. We potentially have trust in our government. They're just making another trade deal with these supermarkets, with these food industries. Food is being produced in science labs. Problem is, you don't need a license to be a parent. You need a license to have a dog.
Yeah.
We have the most advanced technical, scientific breakthrough of medicines and whatnot, but we are the sickest we've ever been.
Welcome to the Visionary podcast, where we discuss science, medicine, physical health, and mental well-being. Annie, you have started the difficult questions now. We conclude our episodes with visionary, moral, ethical questions. Anything problematic is here and now. On your website, you speak of reclaiming our health.
Yeah.
It suggests that we were robbed of something.
Yeah.
What concerns you the most about the food industry in the UK today?
There doesn't seem to be any sort of control over what goes into foods. I mean, I think, number one, coming away from the EU has been an issue in my head, because I think EU had quite a lot of regulation when it came to what went into our food. And now we've come away from that. I think it's just a little bit more open to anyone sort of being able to produce a food that, you know, doesn't really have...
Yeah. I'm not well aware of how we manage regulations now. Are we still following what we used to do when we were still part of the EU? Now, do we have our own thing now?
I think we have our own thing. Yeah, I think we have our own thing. I think we probably abide by some of the EU regulations because they were like good. You know, they were much more, I mean, even our regulations and the EU regulations compared to the US regulations, just unbelievably different. So I think we've got some protection going on, but I think, you know, the problem with the food industry is there's so much money involved, and I definitely think these food industries are totally connected to the government, and they obviously get a huge amount of tax relief, and they get, you know, there's a huge amount of tax that gets, you know, generated by the food industry, obviously, and then the supermarkets are super powerful. So, you know, and it always makes me sad, actually, when I see like small artisan kitchen sort of companies that produce a great product, and then they eventually get much more popular, and then they eventually go into like a supermarket, and then they get absolutely fleeced in terms of like the amount of margin they get from the supermarket, and they want their product out there, but at the same time, it's just, you know, the supermarkets are just sort of they're not protective enough, you know. And when you go to somewhere like France, and I know in France, you know, there's still genetic modified issues going on in places, and, you know, because sometimes you cannot get a tomato that big, I'm afraid. That has to have been modified, you know, when you go to some of these supermarkets in France.
Or bananas, they're huge now.
Yeah, but you still have a lot of variety in sort of French markets, Italian markets. They're very much more focused on the seasonality of the foods that they're promoting within their sort of, you know. And then you go somewhere like China or Korea, and everything's in a packet. Everything's in a packet, and you think, wow, that's gone the completely other way, where you don't want any, you know, it's just. But then they have a great food culture that is real, you know. So it's food industry is a really tricky one. I think that there needs to be regulations. I mean, there was a whole thing with the sugar tax that came in, and you know, and I think a lot of people are now talking about, you know, these everything getting smaller and more expensive, still the same price but more expensive. So like, I don't know, a Curly Wurly or a Mars bar is a much smaller, and I think maybe is that to slow down and reduce the amount of consumption to prevent things like diabetes, or is that just a way of making more money? Making more money,
yeah, absolutely. I don't mind that, because I don't buy these things, but I mind the salmon, piece of salmon being petite, tiny
for £9. Yeah,
it's a bit mad.
Yeah.
If you were to redesign the food industry from the ground up, where will you start?
You know, in the 50s, if we had a Victoria sandwich, for example, which is a cake, a very typical UK cake.
Victoria sponge?
Victoria sponge.
Oh, you still have that.
Okay. And it would have flour, egg, butter, or, you know, and then it would have, you know, some jam, and maybe a little bit of baking powder, and then maybe it would have some butter icing with some some icing sugar and some more butter, and that'd be it. Now, if you were to buy a Victoria sandwich, it's got like 30 ingredients in it, all different numbers, preservatives, you know, the mouthfeel, the science that goes into the food production. You know, food is being produced in science labs.
To be kept on the shelves for as long as possible.
To have the right mouthfeel. And so if I was to start again, I'd go, right, let's go back to basics. Let's produce food that actually comes from real food. So if you're going to have a Victoria sandwich, have a Victoria sandwich. Okay, and fine. Don't sort of, that doesn't need to be on the shelf every day for the whole of the week, for the whole of the month, for the whole of the year, because that's the lack of moderation. Where it's so accessible. Maybe that's something that you have at the weekend and you go to the bakers and the baker's the one that produces it and they actually make it themselves rather than, I feel like supermarkets have become so sort of, they sell everything. They do. And I think that, yes, that's again, helping with our convenience of life. But at the same time, we're all running like so fast. Is that really healthy for us anyway? And like, why don't we just slow down a little bit? So you go to Italy, you go to France, people get up in the morning, they go and buy their bread and they queue for their amazing bread that they buy and they eat. They go with their basket. They have like these little trolleys that they take so that they pop, they go and get their fruit and vegetables for the weekend and they go to the fishmonger that's also and they buy real food and that's the food that they will then eat. And they seem to be functioning fine and still working throughout the week. But I feel like, yes, there is that supermarket kind of like convenience that is great in some aspects, but just focus on shopping on the exterior of that supermarket. Don't go down the middle of the aisles, because that's when you get all that packaged food. That's going to get all the convenience foods and all the snacks and all the saltiness and all the sugariness. Just stick to the exterior if you can and just keep to real food.
I've read about when years and years ago when the Blair government had at that time was a secret meeting with Sainsbury's, Marks and Spencer and Tesco and those people, and they he said to them the salt content in the food is breaking the back of the NHS. Yeah. And following that meeting, they cut the salt content by 30%. Right. It made a difference after, they monitor after 10 or 15 years that this made a difference. And people still eating, people still like buying food and everything, but they don't have to be stuffed with salt. Sugar content. I'm really struggling with my child. That poor child feels poor and deprived of all the goodies. How can sugar be 70% of sweets? It's like 70% of what you're consuming is sugar. Would I like it if it's only 20%? Yeah, I would.
Yeah. And it's just a taste bud adaptation. Yeah, it will still be a taste bud adaptation.
It's not going to be sour, it's not going to be salty. I will still enjoy it. So why 70% or 60% or even 50%?
Because it's cheap. It's just cheap and it's easy to produce.
Ultra-processed food is now cheaper than fresh vegetables. Who bears the moral responsibility of this? The governments, they can change things if they want to, or the food industry?
I think the government ultimately, because I think the government have a responsibility to the nation. And so, they're the keepers, and okay, I'm not looking for a nanny society, but, we have trust in our government. We potentially have trust in our government, but, and we think that they've got our best interests at heart. And, the fact is that they're just making another trade deal with these supermarkets, with these food industries. That's really the crux of it. And I don't think they really have it. And then they'll turn around and say, thinking about why have we got an NHS that's literally crumbling? Okay, it's very historically, the model doesn't really work with the NHS, I don't think. When I lived in America, people have private healthcare. I think there needs to be a public healthcare system, 100%. And that's something that Obama was bringing in. And I think that's what we have very luckily here in this country. But I think if you could put some, if for the people that could afford to put some money towards the NHS, I think we should. Because the fact is that I think that we have the most advanced technical, scientific breakthrough of medicines and whatnot, but we are the sickest we've ever been. And you have to ask the question why. What's making us sick? It's it has to be to do with the lifestyle that we're leading. It has to be. And yes, food is massively impactful to that lifestyle, but also just the conveyor belt of life. The fact we've got to keep going and keep going and keep running and keep needing and consuming, and we've got to have instant gratification. We've got to have everything now.
Dopamine.
It's like a world gone mad. Really.
Hi, I'm Hala, your host today. If you're enjoying what you see, please hit that lovely subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me and my team. Or maybe it's more now. We're still learning, we're still finding our feet, but with your support, we can build this channel. Let's take this journey together, one step at a time. Thank you so much for being part of it. There are not so hidden costs on the NHS, the burden on the NHS,
huge.
the environment, people's dignity when they fall ill and become unable to function.
Super vulnerable.
All these things. And how transparent, I think I know the answer, but the question has to be asked. How transparent is the UK food industry when it comes to disclosing ingredients, additives, nutritional data, do you think?
I think they have to be transparent to some degree because, I mean, obviously they are, you do have a full listing of ingredients in a product, but I think there's a lot of health claims that are just irresponsible, like having, like having fortified, vitamins and minerals in, a very highly sugary cereal, for example.
It's misleading. Yes, the vitamins
and
minerals are there, but there are other bad things too.
Yeah, but then you've got like those let's say those weight loss bars. And actually, when you look at the sugar content, I haven't looked at it recently, but I think it was something like 12 grams of sugar in that one breakfast bar.
Whoa.
Yeah. And those 12 grams of sugar were not just sort of from raisins or actual like whole like food. It was quite refined.
Sugar. So that's
like going to be released really quickly. And so I think marketing, I mean, the amount of multi-million billions of pounds that are spent on marketing, to make people, I mean, I think I saw something once where they were taking, they had I can't remember what it was now, but it was some sort of program where they were showing how they take pictures of like a lasagna for like, let's say Marks and Spencer's, and we went on the photo shoot on the program, and they showed us how they will literally cook the lasagna in a totally different way to how you would actually cook the lasagna yourself. They blowtorch it and they sort of melt just some of the cheese, and then they cut it in a certain way so it was just perfect, and some of it's frozen still, but actually on camera it looks like it's not frozen, so you get the full sort of lovely cascade of lasagna layers. And it's not real. It's not how we'd actually cook it, and it's certainly not what
artificial.
It's all artificial. But there is a whole load of time that went into like setting that production up and taking those images, and I just think it's just misled. And people don't have time to be going through the conspiracy theories or the dubiousness of all this. They just want to make something for their children's dinner. Yeah. But the reality is we just kind of keep getting misled.
We believe what we're told. I mean, the marketing machine. I mean, I appreciate that we have to take responsibility for our food choices. Of course we do. We have to read the labels. We have to educate ourselves. We're adults and all this of that. But I find this a little bit unfair when real fresh food is expensive. It's not accessible to many of us, when the marketing techniques are so powerful. I mean, at the end of the day, you have a certain mental capacity during your day to receive certain kind of information. When you are bombarded by the wrong information, you don't know where to go, and you want the convenient stuff. You have other worries in life.
And you're already dealing with an audience that is already depleted anyway from the food that they're choosing to eat. So they don't have, it's like a vicious circle, basically. They're having foods that are not necessarily as healthy for them. They're then fueled by that. They then, they receive the negative responses of that food, lack of energy, hangriness, what have you. And then they just go and, buy it again because they haven't got the capacity to deal with making a different decision. And people are like habits. People like habit, so they will always sort of tend, especially when you've got like online purchasing as well. It's so easy just to click, buy the same trolley that you had the previous week. So the habit is never really challenged. Because it's just always there to be easily conveniently accessed.
There was no disruption of the status quo.
No.
When we think of nutritional therapy or lifestyle medicine, I find it so hard for these concepts to coexist with a food system that profits from fueling disease. What do you think the long-term health consequences of us being disconnected from real whole foods?
People don't see where food actually comes from. Like we don't, a chicken nugget, for example.
That's not chicken.
I mean, it really isn't chicken, and it's so scary to even look at the process.
I feed it to my child every morning because.
What do you mean?
The thing is, I don't want to give her. Yeah, I know, I do that.
What, from
chicken nuggets every morning for breakfast, because I don't want to give her cereal or porridges or all the rest of these things. So I give her chicken nuggets. No, I should.
What, from like a frozen chicken nugget?
Yes.
Or like...
Yeah. No.
No. Well, because
I offered eggs. I offered lots of things, but she wouldn't.
I made chicken nuggets yesterday for my children.
Made it from scratch.
Yeah. So easy. Breasted chicken.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, breasted chicken, and so the Chinese will, or the Asian culture will. Oh gosh, what's the word called? It's on the tip of my tongue. It is basically is where they soften the actual meat with
They
milk.
grind it?
No, like it's put with like a buttermilk or something like that.
Okay.
And what it does, the enzymes within the milk break down just the
flesh,
the muscle a little bit,
okay.
so that when you then cook the actual chicken nugget, it's a lot softer. The actual, and actually you can do it with bicarbonate soda as well.
Yes,
it's called
cornstarch.
yeah, cornstarch. Yeah, it's called. I forgot what the name is. It will come to me. Anyway, so I would do that. So I'll get my breast and I'll just put it in some yogurt or something like that and just let it hang for a little bit. And then I take it out and then I will basically, I just get sourdough breadcrumbs. I just whiz up in my Magimix and then some milk, eggs. Okay. And I just have like a plate of breadcrumbs and a plate of egg. And I always salt and pepper the egg so that it's been seasoned. And so I just get the chicken, then I put it into nuggets, and then I will put it in the egg first, and then I put it in the breadcrumbs. And actually, you can fry it in olive oil. I just tend to bake them, and I put olive oil on top, and they get crunchy chicken nuggets. That's it. Chicken, breadcrumbs, a little bit of egg.
Amazing.
That's it.
I have to up my game.
Because the thing about like a frozen chicken nugget is that it's just going to be all the like nasty, gnarly bits of a chicken left over that have just been macerated and put into some sort of gel-like substance and then coated in something else like breadcrumb.
Yeah, can I get away by claiming that, I couldn't find any chicken nuggets in the supermarket, Olivia?
Look at how to make them. I mean, if again, my children, they always used to make chicken nuggets. They still do now, and they're 21 and 23. They still get their hands. Yeah, so my daughter would, like yesterday with the chicken nuggets, we had sweet potato, but she made them into the fries and she puts olive oil, salt and vinegar, garlic granules. She does a lot of Tabasco, so they're lovely and spicy. And the trick really is to make sure you don't crowd them on a pan, so that when you roast them, they don't steam each other. They just get nice and crunchy.
Yeah, it can be done.
But yeah, I mean, but I think when it comes to fussy eaters, and particularly children, if you get them in the kitchen and if you get them involved in cooking the food hands-on from the off, then they become a lot less fussy. And actually also the other thing is not to serve them. Put everything in the middle of the table, and then they can help themselves, and they have their own control over what they choose to put on their plate.
That's nice. Yeah.
Always do that.
Super independent and stubborn. Yeah. Plates right in the middle of the table, and she can have whatever she wants.
Then she can help herself to what she wants, because otherwise you're again dictating, you've got to have that bit, you've got to have this bit, you've got to have the peas, you've got to have, and kids as they grow older, they want more control, and they don't have a huge amount of control because they have to go to school and be told what to do all the time, and they come home and they get told what to do by their parents. So they have no control. And I find with eating disorders, one of the main reasons why eating disorders, can occur is because they can exert their own control over what they choose to put in their mouth and what they don't, and that's quite powerful. And so if you give them the control straight from the off, straight from the off, then they can access what they want. And also, what's great when you have fussy eaters is to get friends over, so you have a play date, and then you'll get friends all helping themselves to this and the other, and then you have peer behavior.
Yes,
so then
they copy.
I can have this, this. But getting kids into a kitchen is the best way to get them to get less fussy with the food that they choose to eat.
And it's a social experience as well for both of us. And
yeah.
What is being lost in terms of culture and maybe food identity when entire communities are reliant on convenient food?
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. I watched The Godfather this weekend. I've never seen it before in my life, and
I've never seen it too.
Oh, you should watch it because it's not super food dominant, but there's definitely Italian food getting involved in it. And the thing about food and culture is that it's just intertwined. And the fact is, you're from Egypt, and I'm sure that the culture there with your beautiful breads and your mezes and your food, falafels and and so convenience food promotes convenience, and it promotes lack of sitting around a table and sharing a meal, sharing conversation, sharing the day, sharing the laughs, sharing the sadness. We have distraction. You can't even go to a restaurant without kids being plonked in front of like a iPad,
don't like
no
to see
conversation,
that.
no anything. Parents also on their phone. It's
But
a world
you know
gone
what?
mad.
I know, but the whining I hear, Olivia does have a tablet that she uses for her homework, but nothing else, right? But I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, she was 7, and it was her and another friend, the other friend in a restaurant. The other friend is used to using tablets, and the poor child couldn't sit down from being so restless, jumping up and down and everywhere. But Olivia, on the other hand, so the other children with tablets, and she kept whining and whining. You can't win, but not having her tablet. Just talk to us, love. Talk to us. We can have a conversation.
It's going to be a lost generation. It already is a lost generation, these kids will grow up and they're there to support us in our old age, and that's concerning because I definitely find that there's a need for instant gratification with my generation of sort of like my 20-year-olds, 23-year-olds. They want everything like now because the iPhones were just coming in when they were sort of at that sort of pinnacle age of 10, 12. And so we abstained for as long as we could, and then actually they only really got their iPhones much later on, and we would go to lovely hotels in Sardinia and wherever, and we would still see like kids even of that age on their iPads, and it's not their fault. It's the parents' decision to sit there and not actually talk to their children, not have a conversation, and just have that quiet time where they can enjoy the meal as a couple still, when they've actually got a child there that's sitting in front of an iPad. When we would spend our time Polly Pockets, felts, felt landscapes, Uno is a great one. And I do see parents playing Uno with their kids, and that's a good thing. But I think that it's very scary in the sense that children don't know how to talk. Children are not taught, not being distracted about their food. So that, that you asked about the whole, lack of culture. I mean, you'd never get that in an Italian household. No. You just wouldn't. Yeah. It's, and you do see it. I'm not saying every Italian household is perfect, but, it's Okinawa in Japan, one of the blue zones of this world, the connectivity of culture and relationships and community and food and culture, it's just, and also respect for elders as well. That's another thing is out the window when it comes to this country. Let's just
the way my child answers me, I mean, she's not so bad, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, but she does answer back.
No, I think there's nothing wrong with a challenging child, but it's about, answer back with respect, 100%. But, have your voice. I want to hear what you have to say. But at the end of the day, be respectful.
Yeah, I so regret modern parenting. When I was growing up, I didn't know. I mean, maybe I'm so old-fashioned. When I was growing up, yes, we were seen, never heard.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, okay. Me too. Yeah, cool. We were told all the time what to do. Yeah. No one ever asked us, what do you want to eat for today? No. What do you prefer? What do you do? No one asked, how do you feel, lovely? Are you okay? No, okay. I condone that this is not perfect, but we learned resilience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We learned discipline.
Yeah.
The lovely respect for rules that coupled with me going to a non-school in my primary years. This is a story I always tell my friends. I lived for 7 years in that school, literally walking the line. There were in the corridors, a thick line like this thick, right and left, like COVID style.
Okay.
And I still remember the brick color and the pattern of these two lines. We were never allowed to walk down the corridor. I've never stepped. I know it's brutal.
Why?
Never, not allowed. Oh. You walk right or you walk left in a line.
Okay.
Go up, go down. These are the rules. I know it sounds horrible, and it was horrible. But it was
a rule, and you respected it.
It was a rule, and we respected the rules, and we didn't want to be punished. We respected others, and I learned perseverance. That I have my creative bit. I have the space where I allow myself to do different things, but I still have my discipline. That you do what you have to do. Yeah. But the new generation, there's a completely different.
And I think it comes down to the word moderation again, doesn't it? Right? Because you have both. You respect both areas of that kind of way of living. Whilst, like you say now, I mean, look, there are good kids out there. There are good parenting. There are good kids, but there's also an awful lot of enabling of bad behavior, and also enabling of well, I'm allowed to have that say. I'm allowed to have my opinion. I'm allowed to, like, this wokefulness is,
I've heard that before.
which is, and that's all well and good, but it's like moderation. It's like we can't go too far the other way either. There has to be a middle ground. There has to be, and it comes down to the responsibility that parents have. Problem is, you don't need a license to be a parent. You need a license to have a dog.
Yeah.
Not a parent, bit of a problem.
When I hear anything I don't like from Olivia, I told her only kind words.
Yeah.
And that seems to work somehow.
Yeah.
Medicine. Annie, let's talk about medicine now, shall we? You studied at the College of Naturopathic Medicine. How has that shaped how you view conventional pharma medicine?
Yeah. I think that pharma has its place. I think big pharma seems to be incredibly dominant. It's you've got big pharma, big agriculture, big food industry. They're kind of all interconnected. They are all linked, and they are actually all linked as well. And I think, I'd love medical intervention and medical innovation when it's needed. And, I'm never to say don't have a medical intervention if that's what's needed.
So you're not anti-pharma?
No, I'm not anti-pharma. But what I am anti is a knee-jerk reaction for pharma. I'm anti sort of looking at preventative. I'm for looking at preventative as opposed to just immediate sort of band-aid symptomatic response to, say, a condition or an illness. And I think, to some degree, well, certainly when it comes to antibiotics, that has been woken up to, but there just is a need, like at the moment, I think they're creating a polypill, polypharma. Polypharma. So it's like so it would be a pharmaceutical that is basically a statin. I think it has an ACE inhibitor in it. Which,
cocktail of things?
Yeah, a cocktail pill. That basically,
for all diseases.
One and done basically. And the thing is, there isn't any one and done because, let's say, for example, Ozempic, okay? So are we addressing the problem that person got into in the first place? The reason why they put on their weight in the first place? No. We are affecting their appetite, and that will definitely reduce their intake of food, good food and bad food. So they'll have a protein depletion probably, and a fat depletion. But we're not changing the behavior. I'm not changing the fact that she was an emotional eater, or that she was a stress eater, or that, or he was an overeater. We're not changing any of that behavior. So pharmaceutical is fine, but it cannot be the only focus. It cannot be the only thing that we address when it comes to someone's health. It has to be about preventative health. It has to be about looking at their lifestyle and why they got to that point in the first place. Yes, there's genetics involved, but genetics is a loaded gun, but our lifestyle pulls the trigger. We know that. So the fact is that, I think if I had, if there was cancer and we needed oncology within our family and that was the only way to deal with it, yes, I would have to go with it. I wouldn't be sort of saying, no, I'm going to be ketogenic and hope that it's all going to just, my tumor is going to shrink, because the data says that that's probably not going to happen. But the fact is that I think when you have a good lifestyle, when it comes to, say, chemotherapy, and you have a good, food intake, you're definitely going to get a much more effective chemotherapy protocol. Your body will adjust and work with that chemotherapy in a lot more enhanced way. So I think that it has to be a combination, and I would really love to see, the pharmaceutical industry, or certainly the NHS, or the medical world, focusing a little bit more or bringing nutritional therapy into the mix. Rather than at the moment they have a reliance on dietitian, but that's dietitian focusing on already a problem like diabetes, or some sort of condition like an inflammatory bowel disease, for example. But actually, nutritional therapy could come in as a preventative.
Yeah, you stress on the prevention part, but can nutritional therapy also be a cure to some conditions? I would say so. I have many patients, like, let's say, have osteoarthritis. Look, there's wear and tear in an arthritic hand, for example.
I have that. Yeah, but you can definitely reduce the inflammatory response with nutrition, because you've got these prostaglandins coming in and creating inflammation, and you can reduce and dampen down that activity. You won't probably build back the collagen that you've lost, perhaps. You can take collagen supplements and hope for the best with glucosamine and chondroitin and MSM. But the reality is that you can definitely help reduce the pain that you're experiencing with something like that condition.
Yeah. I only knew that I have osteoarthritis when I had a DEXA scan, then we explored things and all this of that. But I never had any pain. And I know that through nutrition, I keep inflammation to the absolute minimum. From what I understand from you today is that you want us to be in a place in which we rely on nutrition as a frontline defense against diseases. Yeah. So with the right love and care, can my body heal itself?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not, nothing is 100%. You can't just sort of, I don't ever like to claim extreme success in anything, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be a nuance to every individual. But I definitely think that, so for example, I had a patient who had morphia, which is like quite a rare skin disorder, producing too much collagen and making literally the skin on his body thicker. And very, very stressful job, took a lot of ibuprofen, assumed it was like possibly a leaky gut, worked on a gut protocol, healed his gut, and the morphia went away. And that's an autoimmune disease. Yeah. So and I have that with a lot of different patients where we do see a real life improvement based on their changing their food intake and their lifestyle choices. So, I do think that, that it's very individual, and that, there is no magic bullet. But there's the same thing with pills. It's the same thing with pills. And, what comes from pills is the side effects. So, if I had a choice of, pills versus, changing my lifestyle and maybe not eating that pizza on a Friday night, I'd give it a go. I'd give it a go rather than being fully reliant on pills for the rest of my life.
What are the things that pharma companies could learn from nutritional therapy?
I think that what seems to be the data is that if you have a more healthy terrain, so your gut health is in a much more balanced position, and your inflammation is lowered through an anti-inflammatory diet, then if you are taking medications, they will be more effective.
What do you wish doctors, medical doctors and nutritionists should understand about each other's approaches?
That when you are going to see a doctor about, let's say, inflammatory bowel disease, that it isn't that nutrition can't just be like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. You don't need to change your diet. That there's no effect to changing your diet. That's what a lot of doctors will say. I mean, not all of them. I mean, they're wising up to it. I think Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who is like the doctor that does the podcast, I can't remember what the podcast is called, but he's a medical doctor, but he also is a big advocate to nutritional therapy and lifestyle change. Dr. Rupi is another one. I think it was the Doctor's Kitchen. Really great guys, really interesting, and I think that they can see that there is a parallel kind of universe where we can all work together, and we can support each other, and we can feed into each other basically, and it can be more cohesive as a holistic therapy, really.
So how do you approach people with multiple medications? Do you cooperate with their doctors?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So, and I would never, I'm not in a position to ever tell anyone to come off any medications. But, if I feel, our first oath as a doctor and as a nutritional therapist is do no harm. That's the first oath. And at the end of the day, I would always respect, where they're coming from. But if there's things that we can tweak, and if, let's say we're working on type 2 diabetes and we're, titrating down metformin, then, with lifestyle and dietary changes going on alongside, then, over time, we can work to sort of come off it.
Are there any cases in which you tell a patient or a client, I can't help you, go to speak to your GP?
Yeah, if I think I'm out of my depth, for sure, 100%. Okay. Yeah, I don't really deal with cancer patients. I wouldn't, and I sort of worked a little bit in eating disorders, but it's too triggering for me personally, mentally, and I know my capacity, so I, move away from that too. And if I feel like I'm out of my depth, or I feel like I can't do anything more with the patient, I will refer them on. So.
Are there any medications that you feel are oversubscribed?
Protein pump inhibitors.
Okay. What do they do?
They reduce the the gastric acid being produced in the gut. They're used a lot what happens with other medications is that they can produce a little bit too much acid, and so they'll add an additional protein pump inhibitor to reduce the side effects of that particular medication.
A medication to reduce the okay.
Yeah. But what happens when you reduce the gastric acid is you're impeding the ability to break down foods, because gastric acid is there for a reason. Gastric acid is there in the stomach to break the foods down with the digestive enzymes and break that food down, so it can then metabolize and go into the small intestine and be absorbed into the body. If you're reducing the gastric acid, then you're impeding that ability. And what comes from that is potential malnutrition in the form of, I can see something like osteoporosis is one of the sort of areas of concern, I would say, that protein pump inhibitors, I think, play a role in promoting.
Yeah, this is very sad to hear. I mean, I'm not a doctor, and I know that you're not a medical doctor, but the idea of giving medication to deal with the side effects of another medication.
Oh, it goes on all the time.
Yeah. I feel that nutrition is so underused by the NHS. Do you think there are diseases or conditions where nutrition is too readily ignored or dismissed?
Yeah, I think something like heart disease, which is obviously one of our biggies.
It's a lifestyle
disease. It's I mean, things like vasodilators, ACE inhibitors, alongside something like beetroot, which is a natural vasodilator. It's got it produces nitric oxide, which helps to dilate the vascular system. Why not? I think you got to be careful as well, because something like grapefruit can make a medication more potent. So something like blood thinners, warfarin, that type of thing. No grapefruit. Steer clear of grapefruit, because it makes that more potent. So I think, that's why we have to appreciate how important food is, even when it comes to taking medications, because there are positives and negatives to how they affect the body.
I think a lot of us, by default, trust pharmaceutical solutions more because they are supposedly based on science. Where do you draw the line between trusting the science, we don't want to sound unscientific here, trusting the science behind pharma methods and questioning the role of profit in the industry? I have a medical condition now, and I was told by my GP or consultant, take this medication. How do I manage this research?
I think you have to look at different consultants. Really, I think if you go,
it takes a year to see a consultant.
Well, but I mean, in terms of naturopathic as well as allopathic. Okay. So so if you go to see a surgeon, he's going to want to cut you. That's his job. He's going to want to, So for example, I've got a patient who's got a bone spur in his toe, and they want to fuse his toe, and he's a very active person, and ultimately it could really affect the way that he is very active in the future. So he's seen a surgeon, they want to do surgery. Now he's seen a physiotherapist. She's like, okay, you can do some mobility movement on this and improve it that way. Maybe still take the bone spur out, but definitely don't fuse it. And then, he's seen an osteopath as well, who is all about bones and manipulation of bones. So it's about getting a fuller picture. It's not just taking one opinion that, if you see a medical doctor, he's going to give you medicine. Okay, if you see a nutritionist, she's gonna sort out and look at your nutrition. If you see an acupuncturist, they're going to look at your meridians. It's like, if you can get a broader picture when you have a proper condition and it's life affecting, then invest in that. Yeah, is what I think.
Makes absolute sense. Annie, how can people reach out to you and maybe have a chat with you or know more about you? Where can we find you?
Yeah, they can find me at Health Smart Nutrition on Instagram. They can find me at www.healthsmartnutrition.co.uk on my website, and they can give me a call. And that my phone number is on my website, so they can find me that way.
Brilliant. Annie, as I mentioned before many times on this podcast, and that's really the reason why I have this podcast, is that I have so many diseases and conditions, and the only reason I keep a good body and good mind is good nutrition. And whenever I veer off this good path, I suffer the consequences. I do acknowledge that nutrition, as you have rightly said, is not a magic bullet, and there might be a place for medications, of course, in our lives. So I'm already sold on your vision of nutritional therapy. To me, it's undeniable. and your vision that food can actually shift the needle in terms of our health or well-being. This is really, really inspirational and very empowering, because it gives hope to so many people that they could actually have the agency to change their lives. And you also reminded us today that food is not just fuel, it's foundational to healing, to resilience. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely to have you.
Yeah.